welcome back. Today we're gonna watch How to Understand Power by Eric Liu. It's a TED Ed. Another wonderful TED Talk. Power is a curious thing. Power resides where man believes it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall, and a very small man can cast a very large shadow. It's pretty deep. Who said that? Jesus? Oh, I was reading an article, from like a few videos ago, probably like 10, 15, 20 videos ago. I was talking about fertilizers, and then we watched a video on um, the food crisis in India. Now, this article was uh, published a few days ago, and it talks about the problem of not necessarily overpopulation, but overconsumption by the population. And with the recent pandemic, and all the logistical nightmare that it's like ensued throughout the whole world, and the war with Ukraine and Russia being a fertilizer like hot zone. They export a lot of fertilizer. So a lot of countries are now coming into shortages, and not only is like and there's a recent um, drought epidemic happening throughout. It's not even like the summers yet, but it's happening throughout like southern Asia and southern Europe and like Italy, just from like the Everest, Mount Everest, to Italy, where there used to be like freshwater runoffs. It's just dried out and it's just salt water. And now we're seeing all this like um the problem with efficient production, because with how we worked before so efficiently and so productively, that we were able to sustain, the global economy with food, and the global populace with food, even though there's still more people starving, but there's less people starving now than there was before. um just like one like jab, or breakage in the link of this like global economy, you start to see where people are exporting more, people were importing more, and who, like, where the loopholes are, like, oh, this country might produce a lot of money because they do a lot of, technological items that they sell to other people, but they don't produce that much wheat. And this place produces a bunch of wheat, but now that this place can't produce like all this food to give to this other country has so much fucking money, but they ain't got no food. And slowly, if this isn't fixed, more and more people are going to just see where the pitfalls of their country is, of like, yeah, our country might have a lot of money, but we don't have enough food. We don't have enough sustainable food. Like, we can make certain types of food, but it doesn't mean it's going to be good for us in the long run. As in, it'll destroy, like, we're not farming certain things for a reason, because we saw the impact of what it did to our soil, and how that turned out for farmers in, the 40s and 30s. So if we repeat that because of this pandemic, then we know eventually it'll run out. But I just thought that was a pretty cool article. Not cool, but like, to see everything that I've been learning go into kind of action globally is kind of like a really weird sensation. It's, it's
Every day of
awful.
your life, you move through systems of power that other people made. Do you sense them? Do you understand power? Do you realize why it matters? Power is something we're often uncomfortable talking about. That's especially true in civic life, how we live together in community. In a democracy, power is supposed to reside with the people, period. Any further talk about power, and who really has it seems a little dirty, maybe.
This is what we were talking about yesterday in the video of masters and slaves, and how I was saying that is there truly a master in a democracy? And are we not all slaves to something? Or just slaves in nature? Is this what Nietzsche was trying to talk about? How the our forefathers who were built on being conquered and being expanded by the conqueror, who eventually developed the people that are being born. If you have a small city who conquers other cities, who enslaves those cities, who then have them join into your city to make them a big city, then they become citizens in whatever fashion, through marriage, whatever, hard work, or maybe there's just you have enough money to where you conquer more places and those become the new slaves, and then the old slaves get folded into the masters or whatever. So then would they not, those new masters have the same ideology that they had as slaves now as masters? But then you put that into where we're at now in the United States. If the poor people are the slaves and the rich people are the masters, and all those poor people vote in the people in power who are also considered masters, who supposedly take action because of the poor people, or the poor people not in charge since they're voting people? Or is it like a just a sense of being in charge even though these people still are in control? But a, a loose it's a loose understanding of what he was trying to talk about, what Nietzsche was trying to talk about, but also a loose understanding of um who these definitions stand for in like our societal context. Like
Even
I'd have to
evil.
think more of that.
But power is no more inherently good or evil than fire or physics. It just is. It governs how any form of government works.
So he said power is just is. So he's definitely taking Nietzsche's explanation of if you have power, you don't need morality. You just are. But if you don't have power, then that's where morality comes from, because then you need justification of why what you deem immoral is happening to you and what you think is moral, when that person who has the power over you has no sense of morality, because what he thinks is good and whatever you're thinking is bad.
It determines who gets to
Like,
determine the
because you want to be
rules of the
free,
game.
right? And then they're like,
So
why
learning
would the
how
fuck would you
power
want to be free?
operates is key to being effective, being taken seriously, and not being taken advantage of. In this lesson, we'll look at where power comes from, how it's exercised, and what you can do to become more powerful in public life. Let's start with a basic definition. Power is the ability to make others do what you would have them do. Of course, this plays out in all arenas of life, from
That's that's another word for manipulation. Just want to let you know.
family to the workplace to our relationships. Our focus is on the civic arena, where power means getting a community to make the choices and to take the actions that you want. There are 6 main sources of civic power. First, there's physical force and a capacity for violence. Control of the means of force, whether in the police or
Why they got a black stick figure being chased by 3 white police stick figures?
a militia, is power at its most
This guy's
primal.
American.
A second core source of power is wealth. Money creates the ability to buy
I don't even
results
see the money.
and to buy almost any other kind of power. The third form of power is state action, government. This is the use of law and bureaucracy to compel people to do or not do certain things. In a democracy, for example, we the people theoretically give government its power through elections. In a dictatorship, state power emerges from the threat of force, not the consent of the governed. The fourth type of power is social norms, or what other people think is okay. Norms don't have the centralized machinery of government. They operate in a softer way, peer-to-peer. they can certainly make people
That's that global morality I was
change
talking about.
behavior and even change laws. Think about how norms around marriage equality today are evolving. The fifth form of power is ideas. An idea, individual liberty, say, or racial equality, can generate boundless amounts of power if it motivates enough people to change their thinking and actions. And so the sixth source of power is numbers, lots of humans. A vocal mass of people creates power by expressing collective intensity of interest and by asserting legitimacy. Think of the Arab Spring or the rise of the Tea Party. Crowds count. These are the six main sources of power. What power is. So now, let's think about how power operates. There are three laws of power worth examining.
What if you got all of those though? Like, let's go back a little bit. You got physical force, wealth, state action, social norms, ideas, and numbers. So these last three is the power of slaves, poor people, right? This is their um, claim to power. You have social norms or global morality, ideas. You got ideas to break free, and numbers because you have in mass. You can't have a mass of masters. That doesn't make any sense. Then you don't have then no one's a master, right? If you have numbers, uh, there's that saying that if you gave every slave a cape, then they'd see how many slaves there are. It's too many of them. So you can't. So this is their claim to power. Now, state action, wealth, and physical force. So wealth and anyone can exert physical force, right? Like even if you're weak or strong, wealthy, poor, you can exert physical force because you can either hire it out, you can get mercenaries, you can get armies, you can have a coup, like there's different versions of physical force. So that's everyone's power. It's just human nature. And wealth and state action is the master's form of power because not everyone can be wealthy. That has to be, if everyone's wealthy, no one's wealthy. Um, so this is only for a select few, right? If you ever come to a term of the American usage of middle class, you're just poor. Just accept it that you're not rich, that you're just poor. If you ever think to yourself like, "Oh, I make $50,000, I'm middle class." Like, no, you're poor. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But America has convinced a lot of people that you're not poor because you're not getting help from the government, right? Oh, you're not poor because you're not getting help from the government. Um, you're not rich because you're not a millionaire, but you're just middle class. No, dude, you're poor, you're rich. That's all it is. Um, so that's their one of their powers because they can not only accumulate wealth efficiently, but they can use that to really stomp any of these out. And then state action. Same thing with it's just another form of wealth. Um, it's like a form of social wealth, but it's only for a certain group of people that are voted in by the mass, by the people with the numbers who say, okay, this guy has our best interests, so we're gonna vote him in. But then this guy that who's in the state can be coerced, talked into, or manipulated by wealth or physical force. You already assume that he's going to be moved by social norms and ideas of the masses, but wealth is a massive motivator for people because you're not, if you're wealthy and you have the power to affect a whole nation and you can gain a benefit from that, mm, as history has shown, most people will take that.
So now, let's think about how power operates. There are three laws of power worth examining. Law number one, power is never static. It's always either accumulating or decaying in the civic arena. So
Someone
if you
has to
aren't
have
taking
it,
action,
someone has to
you're
not
being
have it.
acted upon. Law number two, power is like water. It flows like a current through everyday life. Politics is the work of harnessing that flow in a direction you prefer. Policymaking is an effort to freeze and perpetuate a particular flow of power. Policy is power frozen. Law number three, power compounds. Power begets more power, and so does powerlessness. The only thing that keeps law number three from leading to a situation where only one person has all the power is how we apply laws one and two. What rules do we set up so that a few people don't accumulate too much power and so they can't enshrine their privilege in policy?
This is seems more so in a democratic state rather than an over encompassing of understanding the dynamics of power, like Nietzsche was saying with masters and slaves. Because in a dictatorship, there's no question in who's in power, and no amount of law is really going to change that, right? And in a state of like a patriarchy or a monarchy, there's really no question of who's who's in charge, no matter how many rules you you try to do with policies and whatnot. You know where you're at, but this is specifically for democracy, it seems.
That's the question of democracy.
No,
And
son
we
of a
can
bitch.
see each of these laws at work in any news story. Low-wage workers organize to get higher pay. Oil companies push to get a big pipeline approved. Gay and lesbian couples seek the legal right to marry. Urban parents demand school vouchers. You may support these efforts or not. Whether you get what you want depends.
It always baffles me that people think that like lawmakers give a fuck if you're like getting married to if you're gay or not. Like they don't care. They only have these because these are like the hot issues that they can talk about so they can be put into power. So if we had a static setting of where no one had any beef with anyone, then the mass would soon see that we do not need these people, right? But as long as there's conflict and there's a state of it, like it has to be like a roller coaster. There has to be a high and a low. There has to be a midpoint. There has to be where, oh my god, like why the fuck are they doing all this? Oh look, they're fixing it. Oh, okay, okay. Oh my god, they fixed it too much. It's an overreaction. And they need to go back up. Like it has to be a constant flow of strife, so they're in power, because it looks like they're affecting things, right? But as history has also shown, if you are put into this high stress situation for a too extended for way too long, like if you don't reach somewhat of a consensus, no one has really been able to do this yet. So there's like no one, I can't tell you what is like the equilibrium state, or what like the where it's good for everyone, where it's copacetic for everyone. Can't tell you because it hasn't been reached yet. Because everyone has been going through the path of overreacting and making the mass very angry. So the mass revolts, and then once the mass revolts and the new mass selects a new group of people to give power to so they can be led, it just starts all over again. You reach a point of like, oh wow, this is so great. We're gonna have a renaissance because of all these great things happening, but then people get complacent, people get greedy, and they start making these overreaching rules that start angering the masses again. So then you go back. It happened to the French, it happened to the Dutch, it happened to the Germans, it happened to the Russians, the Chinese, happened to the British, the, the Romans, the Egyptians, any form of power that you can think of, you'll see them fluctuate through extreme highs and lows, but it always goes back to you pushed your luck and you made the masses too angry.
Depends on how adept you are with power. Which brings us finally to what you can do to become more powerful in public life. Here, it's useful to think in terms of literacy. Your challenge is to learn how to read power and write power. To read power means to pay attention to as many texts of power as you can. I don't mean books only. I mean seeing society as a set of texts. Don't like how things are in your campus or city or country? Map out who has what kind of power, arrayed in what systems. Understand why it turned out this way, who's made it so, and who wants to keep it so. Study the strategies others in such situations used.
Whenever you like, if you ever get interested in like government policies, you if you look at the policy and who submitted the policy, you'll you'll mo- almost instantly you'll see how it benefits that person submitting that specific policy. Either it benefits their constituents and their state as a whole, or it benefits them personally. And if you like dig deep enough, you can see like, oh, this governor or this senator or this House representative got donations from this specific pack or this specific person, this specific company. They'll have this much donation. Like it'll say like something outrageous like $1,000, right? So like that's just like a ping, like, hey, we wanna talk to you. We wanna get a meeting with you. And they'll get that ping and everyone's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe a senator can be bought out for $1,000." Like, no, that's just them legally being pinged, like, "Hey, we want to talk to you." But then in the back end of it, the part that more than likely no one's gonna see is them getting certain types of assets, certain types of, say, collectibles that benefits them more so than that $1,000. But then they just have to push this legislation. And of course, if that legislation doesn't pass through, that's not on them. They pushed it through. And the only way a legislation gets passed through is if enough people get pinged by this certain lobbyist, certain company, certain whatever, then it goes through. Like whatever action you see happening in Congress, know that there's someone pushing those actions. Like it's not just a certain party. Like you need money and you need numbers to be able to push certain actions through. That's why we'll never stop going to war.
Frontal attack or
Makes too
indirection.
much money.
Coalitions or charismatic authority. Read so you may write. To write power requires first that you believe you have the right to write, to be an author of change. You do. As with any kind of writing, you learn to express yourself, speak up in a voice that's authentic, organize your ideas, then organize other people, practice consensus building, practice conflict. As with writing, it's all about practice. Every day you have a chance to practice, in your neighborhood and beyond. Set objectives, then bigger ones. Watch the patterns, see what works. Adapt, repeat. This is citizenship. In this short lesson, we've explored where civic power comes from, how it
If I were to become a new age uh you know new age policymaker or someone that's trying to get into politics, going through YouTube and developing a platform through YouTube would probably be the smartest idea, because not only can you make connections with your audience, but you can also show um, your personality, your charisma, your knowledge, your know-how, the issues that you want to tackle. You can easily convey that, and you can reach masses upon masses, and not only in the state or jurisdiction that you're trying to get to, but in a national level and a global level. So if you're trying to be like a senator, because like, most senators are still a bunch of fucking old boomers, and how they're trying to reach people is still like door to door. But at some point, the people that aren't voting, the young people, the 17-year-old or the 18-year-olds that aren't voting, and really the people in high school that aren't voting yet, they're watching YouTube. They're getting their information from YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. They're going through social media. And right now, politicians and whatnot are going through like Facebook and shit and getting ads from there, but they're just campaigning, right? If at some point they're gonna realize that this is probably the best way to gain an audience. And not only can you like push your agenda through YouTube, but you can all and through other social medias, but you can also influence voters in your state, county, or jurisdiction via YouTube. Because then those people from out of state might know someone in that state, or those people from a different country might know someone where you're living, and they'll go tell them like, "Hey, have you seen this guy? He's in your country. He's in your county. He's in your state. He's this is him. This is his personality. This is what he like does." But right now, how the fuck would I even do that, right? Like if I was like a senator and I was doing it the normal old way, I would still having me to buy ads, print out fucking newspapers, door to door shit, like a bunch of ineffective ways to in this digital age of how to communicate through the masses. But this has been a pretty good video. Pretty cool. A lot of tangents there, but it was fun. It's fun. I'll see you guys later.